schus to throw. We should see the complete tzachim and the complete defeat of all our enemies. They're still not defeated. We should see it take him yad mamish. Lam natseach mizmer leDavid. Yancha Adonai b'yem tzara isagev choshen alehei Yaakov. Yishlach ezrecha mikodesh u'mitzion yisadeka. Yizkar komin chaysecha v'ailoscha yidash nesela. Yitin lechachem v'avecha v'chalatzoscha yimali. Ranu b'shuasecha u'b'shem Eloheinu nidgel. Yimali Adonai kol mashal yisecha. Ata yadaiti ki Yeshia Adonai Meshichai. Yanehu Mishmei Kodshay. B'gvuris Yesha Yeminei. Eile v'rechev v'eile b'asusin. V'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu naskir. Hema korav v'nafolo. V'anachnu kamnu v'nasoyden. Adonai Yeshia HaMelech Yaneinu v'yem koreinu. Okay. What time the girls get back? Late?
Not so
Because it was
late,
pretty
but-
early wedding.
Yeah, or between 10 and 11.
Makes sense, yeah. Now the question about the Alter Rebbe eating in the in the jail while he was there. So this is one of the incidents that happened shortly after, and that is that this minister that we spoke about, that he spoke to the Alter Rebbe, asked the Alter Rebbe questions, and he realized the Alter Rebbe's greatness, and he wanted to do the Alter Rebbe a favor, and he gave over the message to the Chassidim, the Alter Rebbe is alive. He heard a lot of noise coming from the Alter Rebbe's cell. Thank you. And he went to see what was going on. And he saw that the guards were trying to force the Alter Rebbe to eat. They tried to force him to open his mouth, push the food down. And what was going on? Unfortunately, they understood the Alter Rebbe is not eating the food because of the same reason like other people who are in jail. They don't need the food. These are people who are accused and suspected of very serious very serious actions against the government, like treason, the things that have to do with rebellion. So when they catch them, they don't want to give out information, and some of them want to take their own lives. So they thought the Alter Rebbe is doing that. He's not eating because he doesn't want to have to deal with them. So when he saw that, he said to the guards, this is not an ordinary prisoner. You can't do things with him by forcing him. Let me talk to him. So they stopped, and he started to talk to them. And he said to the Alter Rebbe that I see you're not eating, and according to Jewish religion, according to Torah, if a person, God forbid, does something to give up their own life, then it's a very harsh thing. In fact, they lose their share in the world to come. The Alter Rebbe answered him, the reason why I'm not eating has nothing to do with what they're thinking. It's because the food isn't kosher. And even if I would know that I would lose my share in the world to come, I still wouldn't eat kosher. Not kosher. When he heard that, he said to Alter Rebbe, if I would get you kosher food, would you eat it? So he said, only if you would be the only one bringing it. In other words, I don't know if I can trust anyone else, but you, I'm trusting. So he said, so I'll get you kosher food, and you'll be able to eat. So who did he go to? There was a chassid that lived in Petersburg. Was one of those places in that time. The Jews weren't allowed to live there. In order for a Jew to live there, they needed a special permit. And the permit was based on the fact that he had to be there for some reason, usually business purposes. And Petersburg was the capital. So very often it was because people who did business with the government, that's why they lived in Petersburg. We came to this chassid, whose name was Rabbi Lepler. I don't know if the Alter Rebbe gave him that name or he found it himself, but he was very known amongst the ministers, and he was a businessman. He did business with the ministers. So he went to him and he said, could you prepare something for me, food, for someone who eats only kosher? When he heard this, all his whole insides began to jump because he felt for sure this must be about the Alter Rebbe, but you can't be sure. So he prepared the food and he put a note under the food. It was covered with the food. And on the note he wrote, I'd like to know who is eating this food and where are you? And he signed his name, Mordechai Lepler. He brought the food to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe took the food, saw the note, and when he finished eating, he didn't finish everything, but on the note he wrote down that it's, the Alter Rebbe wrote, it's me, and he wrote where he is, but then he added another thing, instructions. Someone should immediately go to Vilna. Remember, Vilna was the headquarters of the opposition. And that's where all the activities of going against the Alter Rebbe took place. So, of course, the Chassidim were beyond excited to see this answer. And immediately they sent somebody to Vilna. They had no idea why he's going, but they knew one thing, that the Alter Rebbe said to go. He'll go and he'll probably find out what he needs to do there once he gets there. Another incident that happened with the Alter Rebbe, which was an incident I mentioned earlier, that shows that tzaddikim of this caliber, everything that happens to them from Shamayim, nevertheless, it's still done with their haskama, with their consent, that they're asked if they want to go through this, and then it happens. Because the Alter Rebbe was in a jail that's in an island. And every time they went for questioning, they went in a boat and went to the mainland for the questioning. So one night, doesn't say which month it was, but Alter Rebbe was in jail the month of Cheshvan and the month of Kislev. And the minig is that you're supposed to do Kiddush Levana, you make a bracha on the new moon. So Alter Rebbe asked them to stop the boat so he can make the bracha on the new moon. Why do you have to stop the boat? Because when you daven and when you make brachas and you do anything in davening, it should be with total concentration. So when a boat is moving, it's wobbling, it's not so stable. When the boat stops, it's more settled. So of course, the captain of the boat refused to stop the boat. And then suddenly the boat just stopped by itself. So the Alter Rebbe said the first part is in the Kiddush Levana, which you don't say, so you're not familiar with it. It starts off with a few lines of Tehillim, and then you make a bracha. The Alter Rebbe said those few lines, but he didn't make the bracha. And then what happened? Obviously he realized Alter Rebbe made the boat stop, but here the boat started to move again. The Alter Rebbe asked him, "Would you please stop the boat?" So he said to the Alter Rebbe, obviously he wasn't so stupid. When he realized Alter Rebbe is such a tzaddik, he said, "What would you give me if I stop the boat?" The Alter Rebbe gave him a bracha, and he wrote down the bracha on a piece of paper. And and actually, the bracha was that he should go to higher levels in his whatever career, and he should live long and be wealthy. And that's what happened to this. Sorry, he was promoted to a higher level. He lived a very long life, and he was very wealthy. And in fact, the Chassid once saw either his son or his grandson that he had that note from the Alter Rebbe, and it was in a frame. He put it into a frame that was decorated with gold, and he kept it. He really kept it as something very precious. It was the son, actually, the son of this officer. So the question that's brought down in the Sichos, the Friedrich Rebbe speaks about this, the Rebbe speaks about this. What happened? First, he wanted to stop the boat. He asked him to stop the boat, he wouldn't stop it. Then the boat stopped by itself. Then it started to move again. And then he asked him to stop the boat. And he realized that Alter Rebbe is such a tzaddik, so he stopped the boat. Once the boat stopped, why did he need to ask him again? Like, why would he need a favor from this person if he already stopped the boat? Now he can do the bracha. So the answer is given that Alter Rebbe wanted, based on the fact that we learned in Maimorim and Sichos, we just learned in Basilagani, that the whole purpose of creation is that the avodah should be in the physical world, which is the natural world. So if the Alter Rebbe would have stopped the boat and then he would make a bracha, that means the bracha was made over a miraculous thing that happened. The Alter Rebbe wanted to do the bracha of Kiddush Lavana in a natural setting, not in a miraculous setting, because mitzvahs have to be performed in the world of nature. So therefore, first the Alter Rebbe stopped the boat to show him that he could stop the boat if he wants to. Then he agreed to stop it. But at the end, he stopped the boat. The non-Jew stopped the boat willingly. And then, now that it was stopped in a natural way, now the Alter Rebbe said he can do the bracha. You'll see in the next few days, we'll start learning more about Hanukkah. There's sichas. I'm pretty sure Rabbi Greenberg will probably learn that sicha. But there's a lot of discussion how the miracle of Hanukkah happened. In other words, yes, there was a miracle. Everybody knows it was supposed to burn for 1 day and it burned for 8 days. But what exactly happened technically? So one opinion is that what happened was it burned. They filled up the menorah the first day, and it burned. And then the next day, miraculously, oil appeared, and they lit the menorah. So one of the reasons why this is not an acceptable answer, according to many opinions, is because that means that the oil was not natural oil, it was miraculous oil. Oil that was produced through a miracle. If it's produced through a miracle, that's not the ultimate way of doing a mitzvah. So again, it's all based on the idea of dir b'tafteinu. So number one, the Alter Rebbe wanted it to be naturally stopped, and that person stopped it willingly. The Rebbe also wants to draw a parallel between this and another subject, a little bit different, but the Rebbe compared the things. When the Rebbe spoke about Miftzayim, to go out in the street and tell people about Yiddishkeit, so one could ask and say, I can't believe that I could walk over to someone who's totally not interested in Yiddishkeit and just tell them about Torah, about mitzvahs, and they're going to be turned on. It just doesn't register in my head that this could really be. So the Rebbe says, you don't have to do anything. The Rebbe already stopped the boat. In other words, the reason why the person is going to respond is because of something beyond what you're doing. The Rebbe stopped the boat in a spiritual way, which means the Rebbe already inspired this person's neshama and this person's heart that he should be wanting to connect to Yiddishkeit. When you walk over and you ask them, would you like to light Shabbos candles, you're just doing something in the natural order. But in reality, what really made the change? Something higher than that. It was something spiritual. Same thing here. The Alter Rebbe already stopped the boat. All he wanted was that he should stop the boat in a natural way. So the same thing is here. I remember once there was a friend of mine, very simple person, and he had a guest for Shabbos, came to the Begisha. So he wasn't religious, he came here for Shabbos. So he told me that when he asked him what his Jewish name was, so all the 24 hours that he was there, he kept calling him by his Jewish name. Why? Because the Jewish name is supposed to wake up the neshama, right? But if you would tell a person whose name is Mark, and you call him Moshe, and he says, "Wow, I want to do mitzvahs now," that would be a miracle. That's not normal. It's not natural. The natural way is you have a discussion, you have questions, you have answers, and that's the way we're supposed to be doing mitzvah. The person has to understand. The person has to have a feeling, but what is behind it, what's the with the electricity that makes it all work, the power is something spiritual, which is that the Rebbe talked about. One of the things that happened with the Alter Rebbe, where they were asking him questions, and in fact, the Alter Rebbe said an interesting thing. That one of the questions were, maybe it was the first question, are you a follower of the Baal Shem Tov? Because they didn't only come out against the Alter Rebbe, they came out against all the Hasidus in general, that it's against Judaism and it's destructive, all sorts of things. So the Alter Rebbe said, if I would have told them I'm not a follower of the Baal Shem Tov, I would have been freed immediately. But the Alter Rebbe said, I didn't want to disconnect myself from the Baal Shem Tov, even for one moment, even if it was only with words, it didn't mean anything, just to get out of jail. But by saying those words, I would be disconnecting from Baal Shem Tov that little bit. I didn't want that. And basically his Mesiras Nefesh continued because he didn't say those words. They asked him many things about the davening and about different things Alter Rebbe taught. And then one of the things they asked him was about this question. One of the part of the accusation was that he writes in his Maimarim that Malchus is the lowest sphere. And remember, we said that the Misnagdim interpreted to distorted it and told the government that what he means to say is that royalty and kingdom, the king, it's all nothing, it's worthless, it's the lowest thing, and nobody should respect them. So there's the Alter Rebbe about that. What does he mean? Of course, why is he sending money to Turkey and was under Israel was under Turkey and all these things? Regarding this question about Malchus, the Alter Rebbe said it's too complicated to explain. I'll put it in writing. I'll write it. The Alter Rebbe wrote it in Hebrew, and they were going to send it away to an interpreter, a translator that's going to translate it from Hebrew to Russian. And we'll soon get a little bit later to that story. Another thing, the Baal Shem Tov, when he davened, he used to make a sound. It sounded like af, 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 af. And the Alter Rebbe made that same sound. So they said that af in Hebrew means wrath, anger. Again, the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov were davening that Hashem should send his wrath on the king. That's how they twisted it. So they asked the Alter Rebbe, why does he say af, af? And the Alter Rebbe said this was very painful to him. Again, he could have just dismissed it and make up some Baba Maisa, like what it means. But instead, he didn't want to disconnect from the Baal Shem Tov and say something not true about the Baal Shem Tov. So he had no choice but to reveal to them the hidden reason why the Baal Shem Tov made that sound. And in general, this is one of the most painful things the Alter Rebbe said, that they were asking him questions to explain ideas of Chassidus. And let's remember, this was in a time where even Jews didn't learn Chassidus, only Chassidim. Everybody else, it was a new thing. And here he had to go explain concepts of Chassidus to these Russian people. And you can imagine, their minds are very coarse and their understanding is very coarse. The Alter Rebbe had to bring it down to that, explain it to them, and that was something which was, the Alter Rebbe said, was very painful to him. But here we see these two things. The Alter Rebbe said he does not want to disconnect himself from the Baal Shem Tov, even for a moment, and even if it's just in words and just to make an impression. One of the also challenging things was, the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, first chapter, that Yidden, our Nefesh Bahamas comes from Klipas Noiga, and the Nefesh Bahamas of the non-Jews comes from Sholosh Klipas Atmeus. And the Alter Rebbe says the word She'ein Be'em Teiv Klal. So they asked the Alter Rebbe, what are you saying? What does it mean? What did Alter Rebbe do? He didn't answer, he just smiled. And the judge said, okay, we'll go to the next question. What does that mean? What happened here? So Alter Rebbe said through his smile, he was able to cancel spiritually whatever they were trying to do at that moment. But the Gashmias, the judge asked him a question, and the Alter Rebbe smile meant to say, listen, everything you asked me, I explained it, you understood it, you were satisfied, you don't want me to explain this to you, right? And the judge understood and said, okay, let's go to the next question. I just want to add something. By the way, here in New York, in Crown Heights, many years ago, Tovshin Nunal, it was 19 Nunal was 91. You probably read about it, heard about it. There was a very tragic incident where there was a car accident. The Rebbe was coming back from the oil. And whenever the Rebbe went to the oil, there was a car behind the Rebbe. And that car had an accident. It hit a child, a non-Jewish child. The child died. And there was a priest, just like in the olden days, a guy, Al Sharpton, and he made a big commotion that they did it intentionally because he's not Jewish, and there was literally a pogrom there. He got all of them riled up, and but unfortunately, they killed someone. They killed there was a person there visiting from Australia, out of all places. It's interesting, this person from Australia was traveling because he was writing a thesis on the subject of anti-Semitism. And he was unfortunately the victim over here, was killed.
He was Jewish?
Who?
He's Australia.
Yeah, he was a from Jew, yeah, from the community in Australia. So at that time, there was a certain rabbi, out of all people, conservative rabbi, and he publicized that, yeah, the Chabad are racist from the beginning. And he's quoted what it says in Tanya, that the non-Jews, Ein Bem Teiv Klal, they don't have any Teiv. What is the answer if someone would ask you such a question? How could you say they don't have any Teiv? So I just want to throw this in, a little bit of an explanation. In general, the language in Tanya is a different language. It's not, certain words are used, the same words, but it's not the language that we use in our conversation. For example, according to Tanya, everyone here probably knows because you're all level 2. According to Tanya, what does the word Russia mean? Russia means only an evil person. And this person is struggling. Is he a tzaddik or a Beinani? Beinani. What kind of person is a Beinani? Beinani is a person, what does the Alter Rebbe say, doesn't do any averos, not in thought, not in speech, not in action, never did, never will do. And this person is called a Russia. So it's just a different language. It doesn't mean, the word Russia in Tanya is not the same word Russia, just like there are other words in English. There's a word like a rock. Rock means you can rock back and forth like this. And rock could mean a rock on the floor. It's the same word, but has a different meaning. The word Russia in Chassidus has a different meaning than the word Russia when you use it in a regular conversation, or even in Gemara.
Russia is not Benoni.
Yeah.
No, it's Russia and after Benoni, no. Kilo, it's the same? Not the same.
No, it's a different level. But remember, the whole point in Tanya was that the Alter Rebbe brings down, it says that even if the whole world tells you that you're a tzaddik, you should think that you're a Russia. What does it mean in that case? Ki Russia. You should always look at yourself like a Russia. It means to be a Beinani. Because a Beinani and a Russia have something similar, that inside they didn't transform. They're just controlling thought, speech, and action. So the same thing with the word Toiv. What does Toiv mean? Toiv means good. So the simple translation of good means if it's Torah mitzvahs, it's good. If it's Aveira, it's bad. What if it's not a mitzvah and it's not an Aveira? What is it? According to Chassidus, it's Klippa. According to not Chassidus, according to Halacha, it's okay. It's not an Aveira. It's not a mitzvah, but it's also not an Aveira. So the word Toiv in Chassidus, in Tanya, and in context of what it's used, usually means godliness, something which is godly. And not tov is something which is not godly. So, for example, is it possible for a person to love doing favors to other people? They love helping people, but they don't believe in God. They just love helping people because it's the right thing to do. Is that possible or not? So you can't say that this goodness is godly because he doesn't even believe in Hashem. So he's being good because he loves being good, which means it's a good thing. Halavai, the whole world will be filled with such people, but still it's not godliness. When it says in Tanya, Ein Bem Tev Klal, it means that everything that a person does, if they have that kind of nefesh habahamis, is motivated by something that it makes me happy. It doesn't mean that they do things to show off or they do things to get a reward. It means they do things because of the pleasure that they get, not necessarily they're doing it out of godliness with Hashem. Like Avraham Avinu, it says Avraham Avinu, he was the epitome of chesed, but everything he did was because that's Hashem's will. And if Hashem wanted him to take Yitzchak and shecht him, he was ready to do that because that's Hashem's will. So everything, even his chesed, even though he was a kind person, but his chesed was because this is Hashem's will. So the Nefesh Elokis has the ability to be able to have kindness in a pure way. It's only because of Hashem. The Nefesh Bahamis of a Yid can also have that. But the Nefesh Bahamis of a non-Jew, even if he lives a life which is pure and good and everything, but it's all connected to the fact that it makes him happy, it makes him feel good, and gives him pleasure. And that is that's what it means. Tov means a certain level of godliness. Even a non-Jew also has a level of godliness. It says in Pirkei Avos that every human being was created in the image of Hashem. So everyone has godliness in him. When we say Ein Bem Tev, means a certain level of godliness is only by the Nefesh Elokis or the Nefesh Bahamis of a Yid. But anyway, that's what happened. The Alter Rebbe smiled, and then he realized the message, and he went on to the next question. Now, we said before that the Alter Rebbe said somebody should go immediately to Petersburg. No, to Vilna. What happened to that person? So that person came to Vilna. I just want to mention again that, which I mentioned before, that Chabad Hasidim and those who are not, those who are Lithuanians, outwardly they look the same. You wouldn't know the difference. So he went to Vilna, and he didn't know why he went there, but he knew the Alter Rebbe sent him. Probably he'll find out. But he went to the shul. He was mingling between the people and trying to listen to conversations. Maybe there's something that he needs to know. So what happened? He heard a conversation that the Alter Rebbe wrote something for the Russian government, a document, and that document was sent to a translator that lives in Vilna. So they heard that they had a plan to go to this translator, and they'll tell him what to write, and therefore it'll be used against the Alter Rebbe, and it'll be another point against the Alter Rebbe. And he realized that's probably why I came. So he went to the translator, and he said to him that I heard that people want to come. That he got a document to translate from the Alter Rebbe? He said, yes, I did. But I said, I heard that people want to come to change. No, I can't change it. I take an oath. I swear that I'm not going to change. I'll be honest. That's number one. And number two, they don't send to one. They send to two translators. If I'm going to change something, they'll see that I was lying because the other translator who lives in a different city is going to do it the right way. And then he added a third point. He said, the Alter Rebbe, he can't even change. The Alter Rebbe wrote his thing so clear, so precise, every word, that you can't even find a way to twist it to make it and distort it to make it against his words. Yeah.
The translator was like a minister who lived in Vilna, or like a
No.
Jewish guy?
He was not a Jewish person, but I guess he was, a person that was licensed, like today. You have to go in court and do translating. You have to be licensed, which means you have to, number one, know that you really know the language and that you're trustworthy. So he said to him, listen, the Alter Rebbe is a godly person. And if he sent me here, obviously I'm supposed to come here to talk to you and beg you not to do anything. And therefore he said, I will not move from this room until you promise me that you're not going to change anything. So he promised him. And he said to him, listen, I have an appointment with the other people. They're coming tomorrow. They're coming in this hour, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. If you want, you can be here. You can hide in this room and listen to the conversation. You'll see that I'm not going to change anything. So Itaka went there an hour earlier, and he was sitting in this room. And then they said, they were talking. He told him more about the Alter Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe's greatness and how it's a false accusation. And then he said, okay, they're coming. So quickly go to this room. He locked the door, and he was in that room. And he was in the room. He hears that they came to him and they brought him 3,000 ruble. 3,000 ruble in those days was an enormous amount of money. And he said to him, besides the fact that you're getting this money, you're also performing a very big good deed. You're helping getting rid of bad things in this world. And you'll have a share in the world to come. Maybe he was a not religious Jew. I don't know. It doesn't say anything about it. Anyway, they started to ask him to change, and he said it's very difficult to change. He was, finding all sorts of excuses. They said, "No, it's not a problem. Hebrew is a kind of a language. You can twist it whichever way you want. You can manage to work around it." And they wanted him to do it. So he said to them, "Okay, I will change it the way you ask me, but I'm not going to take any money. And I'll finish the job tomorrow. And if you want, you can send somebody here tomorrow and I'll show them what I changed." Okay, they're very happy. They walked out of the house, but the chassid in the other room was devastated. He promised him that he's not going to do that. So he came out and he fell down on the floor and he was begging him and crying, "How could you do this?" And he said, "Listen, would I ask you to be in the next room if I really was going to do that? I'm going to write 2 letters. One letter, which I'm going to send to the government, and another letter, that's why I didn't take any money from them, just to show them and they should calm down and stop harassing me." And then he said, "And if you want, I'll write the letter, which is the correct translation. I'll show it to you. And you could walk with me to the post office. You'll see that I'm dropping this into the mail." And that's what he did. And then he understood that that was the real reason why the Alter Rebbe sent him. And he stayed there anyway, just to see what else is going on. And then he heard the news that the Alter Rebbe was freed from jail. Then he knew that his job is over. He can go home.
I didn't understand why he went in the first place. If this man was honest on it.
If what?
This man was like honest.
Yeah.
In the first place, he wasn't.
Oh, so he said the Alter Rebbe sent him because even though he's honest, but when people start harassing you and telling you it's a big mitzvah and you can get rid of a very big Russia and the whole world depends on this, then people get influenced. He was honest, but still human. When the Alter Rebbe went out of jail, the protocol in the jail was that the guards have to lead you from the jail to your house. So he asked Alter Rebbe, "Where do you want to go?" So he said he wants to go to the house of Rabbi Lepler, the same chassid who made him the food. Again, it was a big chassid. They say he was actually a Beinoni from Tanya, but he had permission to live there because of his involvement with the government. So they brought him to the house, and in that house, the chassid lived on the second floor, on the first floor, and on top of the chassid, upstairs on the second floor, lived someone from the opposition, and not only opposition, he was one of the people involved in getting to the government with a false accusation. Obviously, if he lived in Petersburg, that means he had contacts with the government, and he used his contact with the government to file a complaint against the Alter Rebbe that he's deserving to, God forbid, be arrested. So you mean that instead of bringing him to the Alter Rebbe's chassid, which would be the best that could be, they brought him to the worst apartment. And when that Snagit saw that the Alter Rebbe was taken to his apartment, he slammed the door and he held the Alter Rebbe hostage there for a few hours, 3 hours. And he held the Alter Rebbe hostage for 3 hours, and the Chassidim were totally confused. They went to the jail. They said, sorry, we took him out of jail. We brought him to the apartment. He went to the apartment. Alter Rebbe was not there. They went back to the jail. They're looking in the streets. They couldn't imagine what could have happened. And how did they find out in the end? One of the times that they went back and forth to the apartment, they heard someone screaming, why did you change the Kedusha to Keser? Nagdisha is not good enough for you. In other words, the Alter Rebbe, one of the things the Alter Rebbe did was that he wrote the Siddur, which we have, the Nusach. The Siddur, when it comes to Kedusha, in Musaf, it starts with the word Keser. The rest of the world used to say Nagdisha. Keser is more the Sephardi Nusach. So it did exist, but not by Ashkenazim. So he was screaming out to Alter Rebbe, who gave you permission to make changes in the Siddur? When they heard that screaming, they realized that's where the Alter Rebbe is. So they banged on the door, they pounded on the door, and he didn't want to open. So he told them, if you don't open the door within seconds, this door is going to disappear. So he opened the door. He said, okay, calm down. Here's who you're looking for. They saw the Alter Rebbe sitting by the table, and he was leaning on his forehead. Later, the Alter Rebbe said that the 3 hours in his apartment, he suffered more than all the 53 days that he suffered in the jail. And the reason was because, what was he doing? They were screaming at him. He was saying very negative things about the Baal Shem Tov, about the Maggid, about Chassidus, about Tanya. The Alter Rebbe said, hearing such words from your own brother, from a Yid, was much more painful than all the suffering that he had the 53 days while he was in the jail.
Why do it?
What?
Why he did it?
That person? Because he hated the Alter Rebbe.
Why
He was one of the people who were against Chassidus. Why he hated? Well, either he hated because he didn't understand, or because he was just not a good person. I would imagine that's probably what it is.
But how like person that learn Torah all the day can be like not good person?
It doesn't happen automatically. You can learn Torah a whole day. If you don't work on your midos, you're not going to change. On the contrary, you can learn Torah and become worse. You can become an arrogant person. You know a lot of Torah, you're very arrogant, you have money, and you think you're amazing. So they were about to leave. The Alter Rebbe said, it says in Gemara, you have to give honor to your host. So being that this man was my host for the last 3 hours, I'll drink a cup of tea to acknowledge it. And the Masnagid poured the cup of tea to the Alter Rebbe. Later, the Alter Rebbe, many years later, the Alter Rebbe said that he regrets that he drank the cup of tea because it gave him substance, it made him feel important, and he didn't want to even do that. Just a story about the crown. The Alter Rebbe was there with a few other chassidim. And in fact, there's one chassid there who was not a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. And he said to him like this, he gave him mashal. He said there was once a king, and they had to make a new crown for the king. So the ministers were debating how to make the crown. Some said to make it like this, some said to make it like that. And at the end, they made a decision. They're going to make it a certain way. Now they gave it to a silversmith, a person who works with silver, and he's going to make a beautiful silver crown. They told him how to make it. So then this person says, I think you should make it the other way. That's better. And they said to him, hello, you were given a job to make a crown. This decision, whether it should be this way or that way, that's for the ministers. You're just a simple worker. Just follow orders. Who are you to give an opinion how a crown should be made? So he said to him, they're great tzaddikim, that they are the ones who wrote the Siddur, and there are different opinions whether it should be this crown or that crown. They have their opinions. You're just supposed to say what they tell you to say. You're not a person that you are able to give an opinion on a crown. And anyway, after that, they walked out of the apartment, and I'll continue tomorrow, Mir Hashem, what followed. Also, there's a lot about this thing of being in the apartment for 3 hours. We'll explain, but that's the reason why Yutas Kislev is celebrated 2 days, Yutas and Chof, because the Alter Rebbe went out of jail mincha time, and then he was in the house of this person for 3 hours in the night. It was already Chof Kislev. And because the Alter Rebbe said that those 3 hours were even more suffering than the 53 days, so it's also a yontiv that he was freed from that person's house. So that's why we celebrate 2 days, Yutes Kislev and Chav Kislev. To be continued tomorrow and Wednesday, and Thursday, Mirz Hashem.
אפשר לשאול שאלה.
Yeah?
אני חושבת על זה שכאילו, נגיד יש בן אדם שלומד תורה, והוא באישיות שלו לא מתייחס נגיד יפה לאנשים או כזה, ויש אחד שהוא לא שומר תורה ומצוות, אבל הוא בן אדם מאוד טוב, עושה מלא חסד וזה. מה כאילו... לא יודעת מה עדיף, או כאילו מה... איך...
The rule is that one thing doesn't take away from another. If a person has good midas and he doesn't learn Torah, the fact that he doesn't learn Torah is a negative thing. The fact that he has good midas is a positive thing, which means just because he doesn't learn Torah, it doesn't take away the credit from the fact that he has good midas. On the other hand, the person that learns Torah and has bad midas, on one hand, you can also say the same thing. Okay, he has bad midas, but at least he learns Torah. But in a lot of places where it says that a person learns Torah with bad midas, in a certain sense, it's even like a negative thing because he's using Torah to inflate his ego and think that he's a big, important person, and he could embarrass other people, talk down to other people, and so on and so forth.
אז זה יותר גרוע?
בפרט אחד, סוף כל סוף הוא לומד תורה.
כן.
בפרט אחד יש משהו אפילו יותר גרוע, שמשתמש בתורה כדי להגדיל את האגו שלו, כן, או להזיק לאנשים אחרים. Okay, to be continued. You're welcome.
היום זה מ-10 עד 10 זה מלא. תוריד את המייל. תתחילו להתפשט. לא, אל תדאגי. לא, אל תדאגי. יהיה כיף. שותים הרבה תה. אתה מבין? אני עובדת שעה.
Hi, good morning. How are you? Oh, perfect. Just where I left it. You could start.